Nice to see you, Okra. Nice to see you, friends online. Once again, we have this beautiful opportunity to be an island of peace of mind and compassion and sanity. And once again, it is very needed in these days and these times. And this week, we're going to return again to this beautiful book. We're getting pretty close to the end. I think we probably have 3 or 4 more nights, maybe 5. And tonight, I think the message is quite poignant and meaningful. And this message that Tsoknyi Rinpoche is talking about is how do we really get clear with ourselves on how to live our dedication to compassion in the world, not only on the cushion and with ourselves, but how do we really get clear to make that dedication extend and expand? Thich Nhat Hanh famously called this engaged Buddhism, right? And that spirit of activism through our practice, not only removing ourselves from the world and kind of polishing the inner lens, but then how do we give to the world? And how do we even see our action in the world as part of our practice? And many, many, many times people have asked meaningful questions here. I'm thinking of Noemi, who's on month-long retreat now, often asking, why are we doing this Dharma when the world is like it, the way it is? When everything's falling apart and things are so horrible, why are we closing our eyes in silence together? That's not her exact words. And she's not saying it to be difficult or challenging. It's, I think for many of us, an inner struggle. Like, how does this work we do here matter? And how does it feel meaningful when there's so much need in the world? And, this evening we'll talk about that and discuss that. And I also feel such honestly, like a true delight in this community, because I feel that the practice and the depth and the connection of what all of us are doing here is starting to naturally flow into the engagement with the world. We've had that the last number of years in the ways we show up for the community on Dia de los Muertos, right? And create a space of collective offering and grieving and rejoicing. And then the teacher who is here, one of the teachers who's here on Monday, Augusta, has been sitting every Thursday at City Hall at noon, really kind of practicing that nonviolence as, civil action. And many of you were here just before we started as we're planning this peace march on April 11th. And these are very small examples, right? These are small things that we can engage in and that we can kind of feel that sense of connection, not only with, of course, community, but that sense of connection of our responsibility to the world. So often here, we close our practice with the dedication that everything we do here relate to other beings, that everything we do here and all of that energy could actually, symbolically be sent to everyone in the world who needs it. And that's this aspirational bodhicitta, like this way that we are imagining and inspiring our heart to open for others. And then there's the very direct action, day to day, but it happens on various levels. And one of the places we get to start this evening is, what would it be like to consider our practice as bodhicitta in direct relationship with ourself? So bodhicitta being that awakened heart, that sense of kind of deep care, natural, not like I should and I mean to and it would be good if I cared, but just that care that feels natural. For some of us, applying that to ourselves is like the hardest target. Much easier for someone else in need, much easier if someone else is struggling for us to open that heart of care. And this prospect of bodhicitta towards ourself means that we are, in some ways, kind of like cleaning the inner hearth, like making space within ourselves to be kept warm, to feel protected and supported. And that's honestly not trying to change or fix what's happening. It's a very simple being with what's happening and being with what we're feeling and experiencing at an emotional level. One of the practices Tsoknyi Rinpoche loves to teach is this handshake with emotion practice. So today we're going to do the handshake with emotion really with the intention of how kind can I be towards myself as I am right now? Like how kind can I be with whatever is here? Anybody here, for example, feel tired? How about a little despair? Okay, some honest people. Anybody here had any experience today of like profound self-criticism? Or, other uncomfortable thoughts about oneself? So it's like, how kind can we be with that? And this practice really invites us to move from the cognitive to the somatic of that prospect. So it is helpful before we practice to just consider, in a reflective way, like what are some of the things that I am carrying in my mind and in my heart that are hard to be with? Just to kind of prime ourselves with that. Maybe it's grief, loss, maybe there's uncertainty, impotent rage around the world the way it is, right? So just kind of almost evoking so that we can then be with that which we are carrying in the mind and the heart. And the practice is very simple. The practice is this direct meeting of the experience in the body. And for some of us, that's tricky. We don't feel that connected to the body or that safe in the body. No problem. We just kind of keep turning towards this quality of embodiment and softening with whatever we find, whether that's a feeling of kind of diffuse, maybe even dissociative sense, or whether there's a deep ache or a heaviness. So the entire practice of handshake with emotion is meeting the essential quality of our experience, not the story, not whether we like it or don't like it, the essential quality. And sometimes that's just described as, vibration or light or energy. So it doesn't even have to be anything that feels solid or nameable. So with that exceedingly long intro, let's find our way into a posture that will support this practice of bringing bodhicitta all the way home. In any practice where we're engaging with compassion, we start right from the beginning with this sense of finding ease wherever we can in our posture. If we need a little extra cushion, if we want to reposition the feet or the hands, and finding a place where the neck can feel at ease, the head resting in a position that allows us to feel the suppleness of the spine, that uprightness. So not leaning too far back, not pitching too far forward with the head. And helping ourselves settle in a bit by simply feeling the presence of gathered beings here together. whether you know other beings in the room or not, this gathering for a shared practice can bring such a sense of grounding, connection. So feeling that sense of, in this moment, being not alone. And for a couple moments, allowing ourselves to simply experience everything in this phenomenal world through the senses, the sounds, sensations, maybe even the play of light behind closed eyelids. Not excluding anything, not holding on to anything, just noticing the shifts and changes of sensation, sound. And as we settle in, we can deepen our connection to the breath. With the next inhale, extending and lengthening the inhale. Gently holding it at the top. And then gently extending and releasing the exhale. Little hold at the bottom. Continuing with this lengthened inhale. If it's comfortable, pulling the belly button towards the spine. And with the exhale, gently, smoothly extending and expanding the belly. A couple more rounds here. Extending the inhale and drawing in the belly button. And then extending the exhale. Coming back to the natural rhythm of the breath. And we gently shift now to this invitation all the way home into the heart of bodhicitta. Turning our attention and awareness towards the heart and imagining that simple spark of goodness or okayness, that spark of loving presence. If it's hard to feel that loving presence or that spark of goodness, no problem. We could bring to mind something that allows the heart to naturally rejoice or delight, something we find beautiful or cherish. Any way that we can get a little purchase into the softness and gentleness of the heart, and quality of sunlight or the face of someone we love. And just a bit longer here with that essential spark, that essence love. Maintaining some of our awareness and attention with this warmth or this spark, this sense of love and intrinsic okayness. We now open the aperture and become aware of all the sensations in the body. And for a couple moments, just scanning the body and noticing the different areas and the different qualities of sensation in the body. As much as possible, noticing these sensations from within the body, not looking down upon the body or imagining, but feeling the body from within the body. We can notice the overall volume of the body, the sense of its presence in space. We can feel the temperature, maybe areas that feel warmer or cooler. And the inevitable areas of strain or ache. And then we invite attention and awareness to go one layer deeper, noticing the quality of sensations in the body associated with feelings, memories, what's being carried in the mind and the heart. And beginning by simply bringing attention and awareness to this layer, this subtle body layer. Maybe there's that pang of heartache right below the chest. Maybe there's a twist of worry somewhere in the belly. Without even needing labels or needing to know what is the content or story. Just a bit of time noticing, making space for and meeting whatever is here in the body. And the intention of this, infused by that bodhicitta, simple, loving, curious presence with whatever is here in the body. And of course, we'll get pulled away by thoughts and memories and images. Might even feel as though we're kind of floating to the surface. And inviting our attention and awareness to return and to descend more deeply into the body. And have this very simple, unelaborated meeting with whatever is here, just as it is, with loving presence. And some of these sensations, these heartaches or worries, they feel steady and sticky. But just with loving presence and awareness, they may start to unwind or unfold or shift or change. But the key with this practice is no agenda. Don't try to feel anything. Don't try to not feel anything. This respectful, caring meeting of whatever is here. That layer of subtle body, sensation, emotional residue, whatever is here. Maybe a particularly persistent thought or memory or image arises. And as we release it, we can notice what is the impact on the body. In this practice, we have the opportunity to be with this incredible array of passing sensations, associated with emotions and feelings, thoughts and images. No agenda, nothing to do, just meeting them again and again. The essential quality, the energy, the vibration, the light. Even if the sensations get very subtle, keep maintaining attention and awareness with the body. Whether our attention and awareness is localized to one quality and texture of sensation or feeling, or we simply experience the spaciousness of the body, and keeping our attention and awareness tethered to this present moment, presence in the body, shifting and changing. If any sensation feels too strong, we can place our hands in the belly, open the eyes, focus on the breath. Otherwise, we keep steady here a bit longer. The steadiness of our loving awareness and presence may allow even deeper layers to open, to be held and seen with this loving heart. whatever sensations or qualities we're experiencing and meeting with this heart of bodhicitta. Can we feel or sense or imagine that there's space all around it and within it? And instead of bringing the attention and awareness to the foreground of the sensation, maybe we lean back into the awareness, that more spacious, open, loving quality of presence. Sensations still arise, but we are more like that sky quality in which any amount of cloud or fog can arise and pass away, shift and change. This spacious awareness can feel like a deep nourishment. There can be a quality of vibrance or luminosity. So not just spacing out and getting dull and fuzzy, but a vivid brightness with this quality of spacious, open awareness. Just a bit longer. Remembering you can always return, refresh, and recommit to this connection with spacious awareness, with loving presence. Just that sense of almost leaning back in the mind. And with the next breath, regathering attention and awareness to the body. Reconnecting to that sense of inner refuge within this body, heart, and mind. Thank you for your practice. So we're very fortunate here in the Dharma Collective in getting to practice together and getting to share reflections and insights. And in order for us to do so, we also get to create community each evening. And each evening there's a different beautiful starry night sky, different constellation of beings who are here. Some of you I know, some of you I've never seen. And in order for us to be in community, we really bring that bodhicitta to life. Meaning when we hear others speak, we're engaging with ears of compassion. When we ourselves are sharing, we're doing so from a heart of compassion and care. It is so beautiful that we have a place to come to kind of create this sense of, refuge. And many of us are coming here with various versions of weary hearts, right? People don't usually come to the Dharma because things are going great. Maybe you keep coming back after things have gotten better because you know that it helped, but let's be real, right? And so to be so considerate with our tender hearts with each other and how we're listening and how we're kind of building community together. So I want to share some of Tsoknyi's thoughts today. This is the teacher we've been following for the last, who knows? I'm always like, it's been a month, and it's been like a year. Wait, I probably have the first date in here. Oh, July, since July. And at this part of the book, the entire book is always weaving in on itself. It's always giving us this opportunity to see and know what is the obstacle for us feeling connected and whole. And often that obstacle is a sense of identity or self that makes us feel either really important or really insignificant and vacillates between the two, and this kind of performative self, right, that we create in order to move through the world. It's very useful, but also sometimes we lose connection with the deeper sense of who we are, this kind of alienation with our authentic emotions and experience and desires. And he says part of the ungluing of that, idealized self-structure that we put into the world is by just noticing, very simply that we are already love. And it's simple, but as my root teacher always said, Alan Wallace would say, simple but not easy. So noticing that we're already love, it's actually really obvious if you pay attention for a little while. Like, it's always warm and there's care and there's connection, but it is quite hard to rest in it. So part of the ungluing is in investigating whether that's true, whether there's a fundamental aspect or a spark of goodness within us. And then he invites us to kind of really notice the inner architecture of this body beyond the physical body, right? So we have, physical form and weight, and, of course, our bodies are aging and they're shifting and changing. And then there's the subtle body. And this is, as I've mentioned, an area we don't know a lot about in contemporary psychological science. We know that stress gets under the skin. We know that there are ways that what's happening in our mind and heart impacts our physical functioning at various levels. But there's that layer, that porousness of the subtle body really describes what we're looking at in the practice, which is this way that the emotions have a residue within us. And that there is a subtle body inner architecture that when it feels unencumbered and free, everything flows naturally. We feel more alive, we feel more awake. That love is just unencumbered. And so a lot of our meditation, I think he even said in here, every meditation practice is a subtle body practice. And many things we do that aren't meditation are subtle body practices. Of course, many of our beautiful martial arts include subtle body practice. And being able to actually, if we feel safe enough and okay enough, moving through the city with our senses open, catching the light, catching, different qualities that can really help us feel kind of settled and open. So he brings us into that piece. And then we've spent the last, I think, 8 weeks on non-dual awareness. So I'm letting it go for now. That was hard, guys. I mean, it's still here. It's never not here. But we're not going to nerd out on it. It's so hard tonight. Last week was next level nerding out on non-dual awareness. So, but that, what he brings into this whole kind of weaving with the non-duality is to really rest our mind, our hearts into something greater than our habitual ways of thinking, than our karmic patterns, right? Again, the ungluing of, I'm this person who needs to be like this and who should be doing this, and kind of resting in, what if I don't need to be or don't need to do? What is here? And in that, there's this opportunity of, oh yeah, what is here? Everything's here. Wait, what isn't here? Right? So the kind of non-dual insights that can make us feel deeply connected to one another and everything. So we weave through all of this and many other things so far in the book. And then we get to this really sweet spot where he's inviting us to consider, are we really pushing ourselves in our practice? Or have we gotten comfortable enough and we're kind of just letting the practice go on? And I'm sure many of you are like, it is not comfortable in my practice. And it's not just about yeah, of course, your mind is here and there and everywhere and your legs hurt and your arms hurt, but meaning, are we comfortable enough with the level of practice? We've had maybe some basic level of sanity that is available to us through practice and through the worldview of practice. And then to kind of, what's the next way we want to push towards actualizing the practice in the world? So before I get into that, I would be curious from folks if there were questions or reflections from that meditation, from the handshake practice. Some of you have done handshake many times. So anything interesting you want to share or questions you have about it? Yes, please. Yeah, we use the mic in the room so friends online can hear.
So I just had a question about when we see when I was contemplating and you were guiding, it seemed to me like there's some, let's say, emotional almost knots.
Yes.
Just ties.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure, it's very difficult to I don't know what to do with them in some sense. How do we actually untangle it? It's as if this congestion almost, over the heart in some way. I don't know how to describe it, but the best way I can think of it is like a knot.
Yeah.
And are we meant to untangle them? Are we meant to what is the ideal?
Yeah.
Once.
Yeah.
least start practicing regularly?
Yeah.
Yeah, something.
Such a great question. And honestly, it's a very, what we kind of call like a confirming sign or something very supportive that you notice the knots, right? Because often we're not even able to kind of permeate that level of subtle body. And that's exactly what it is described as in the tradition, are knots in the subtle body. And in the chapters of subtle body, we get into there are channels, and then there are kind of drops of energy, and then there's the movement of energy. And in a very simple way, like you've probably seen maybe an image somewhere of, you know, a body, whether it's the meridians or like psychedelic art, right, where it's everything's flowing through these channels. And when we note our experience through that kind of close application of attention and awareness, and we can feel the knots, like I think the simple instruction I gave, which is from Tsoknyi Rinpoche, of you really can't have an agenda with those knots. You can't have this expectation like, I'm going to pay attention and I'm going to breathe here in order for it to go away. So it really is like the move or the instruction is to really meet it right as it is. And there's a relaxing. And that idea or that image of whatever this knot is, it has all the space it needs. There's no rush, there's no imperative. And there's this image sometimes used, it's actually usually used about the mind when it's in knots, that it's like a cobra that's stuck inside of a basket, you know, and all you need to do is like open the basket. You don't go in and like try to undo, you know, like you let it undo itself. And so these practices, in some ways, it's like we're loosening the weave of the basket, or we're making more space so that the knot unwinds itself. And I'm curious, when you noticed the knot, did it move or did it stay in a place or?
I think it was rigid and I don't think it moved. It was just like, just there.
Yeah. Have you noticed it before, or is this the first time?
Not this viscerally.
Sorry?
Not this viscerally. Like,
Yeah.
Not this like clearly, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's there, yes.
Yeah. And you don't have to share this, but did you get a hit of like what it is from? Like, is it a grief? Is it a worry? Or just hard to know, just a visceral knot? Like, how did you know it isn't indigestion or a strained muscle? How did you know there was a quality of emotion?
I mean, I guess it's more like perhaps like slight anxiety, but also angst. I
Yeah.
don't know how to describe it.
Yeah, yeah. And the words are not needed, but it is kind of helpful to, like you said, it's so hard to even describe it. And yet we can do, you know, that first person introspection. Last week when Michael Sheehy was here, and he was doing a little microphenomenology in real time with Raf, right? Just the, well, how do you know what you feel? And how do you know about that? You know, just that level of inquiry in our practice, if it's done gently, can be really interesting. So as that, if that knot arises again in practice, you know, this curiosity of, how do I know the knot is here? Does the knot have a color? Does it have a shape? You know, that's one way of kind of working our way towards opening to it. And we also could simply just keep giving it that space, keep giving it the space, that kind of warm, loving presence. You know, I get the image of you know, curling up in a ball when you're afraid, and then you're not going to uncurl until it feels really safe around you, you know, and then it's okay. And so there might not be even anything you need to like do other than create that space that feels supportive. Yeah, thank you. Any other questions or reflections on the practice? Yes, Raph.
There's some of my knots are not so subtle. The body's not so subtle in it. And I just wanted to kind of riff off of that because, so I have sitting pain.
Yep.
And one of the things that I've grown to realize in these practices is, I mean, over a few years now is the cycle of, oh, it's just pain. I'm gonna fight. I'm gonna avoid it. I'm gonna fight it. I'm gonna avoid it. I'm gonna fight it. I'm gonna feel it. I'm gonna think into it. Very thinky, thinking about the pain. Where does it come from? What did I do today? But a little bit of a breakthrough that I had recently, actually during some of the non-dual practices, was I started having a realization the difference between thinking, like the kind of like problem solving versus being with. And so one of the things I started realizing is that the pain had actually fear in it. So the pain is there, biological reasons probably, but there's an extra layer on it of like a fear emotion that's hanging out there. So then, not in a problem solving mindset, but I started being like, well, what am I afraid of? I was like, I'm afraid of the ground. I'm afraid of like the thing I'm sitting on. So it's like, well, and this is where I think maybe it's just scaffolding. I was curious about your thoughts on this, but I started by kind of cognitively just going like, well, I'm going to thank the ground. I started just like, thank you, ground, thank you, earth, for holding me up, that kind of stuff. And it started out very, I'm saying these things. Then it got a little bit more like a mantra. And so this has been going on like silently for the last like few weeks or maybe a couple months. And recently I've been starting to feel like I can more access just the gratitude directly. So it feels like the thoughts are melting into the feeling a little bit. Anyway, that's just
Beautiful.
I was kind of curious about your thought about that transition from like it's like the thinking feels like scaffolding to something deeper.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's again like a beautiful knowing to know, okay, here's the physical form body pain, right, which many of us have, and all of us at some point will have. And then there's the other layer, maybe it's around it, maybe it's in it, maybe it's, who knows how to describe the relationship where, that added piece, that distinction in Buddhism between pain and suffering. The pain is, I have something going on with my hip, it hurts. And then the suffering is, why is it that way? I wish it wasn't that way. I'm afraid of the ground. And that's a really interesting insight to arise. I'm afraid of the ground. And then the impulse to like, thank you, ground. It's having devotion, right? And humility towards that which we're afraid of. It's quite counterintuitive. So it's interesting that that's what came through your practice. And I really think, ardently that all of us are experiencing our own Dharma. Like we listen to the teachings and we receive the practices, and then our own wisdom comes up to meet us. And it can be so trustworthy, right? And that kind of like, oh, I'm afraid of the ground. Thank you, ground. And then just gratitude as this natural kind of solvent from the contraction, And I often think of this as an anxious type myself, like anxiety and gratitude can't exist at the exact same moment for me. So when I'm recognizing what I'm so grateful for, all of a sudden the anxiety isn't quite so present. So just natural wisdom, that can sometimes arise through our Dharma, right? Not like I read it in the book. Reading it in the book's great, right? Or hearing it in teaching is great. But then the teachings, they start to like, they start to meditate us. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah. Anyone else? Any other questions, comments on the practice? Yes.
Yeah, I really appreciate the comments that were made. I've had a strong contemplative practice, stop, started meditating again. It's been this multi-year journey for me. And what I realized through some of the comments in the discussion today, I have one of these knots that manifests as anxiety-like around the breath, and then actually bringing the attention to the breath and sitting makes that intensify and feel uncomfortable. And then the striving head comes in of like, let me focus on the felt sensations. It's that then brings a whole cognitive layer to it, which I know is not of service. But yeah, it's interesting to think about this almost shortness of breath that I have felt, and how that has come in and out and has affected, I think, the challenge I've had sticking with the practice.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's very good to notice it, and It's quite uncomfortable and not uncommon. Many people struggle with breath for different reasons, and then it's like one of the main anchors. So you're like, fuck, like what, am I not going to do this? So I'm curious, like when the practice has flowed for you, like what anchors work or feel supportive?
Yeah, I've worked on sensations of the body elsewhere,
Yeah.
outside of the central channel. I've tried to focus on the feeling of breathing like elsewhere from this central area. Yeah, but I think, so it's worked better in those cases.
Yeah. Have you ever done the, kind of visualization practices, maybe with compassion or otherwise?
I have. I think those would probably be helpful.
It'd be interesting. I mean, like most of us, many of us are head types. Like we have a lot of upward displaced energy. The lung is really strong. And for some people, the visualization gives us just enough. And it's still an anchor. It's still an attention practice. We're cultivating sustained attention. And then it allows the heart to soften. Because when we feel contracted with the breath, the heart can't soften. So then it's like we're like above our practice. Like we can't really be in it. So, whether it's a compassion practice or even visualization, either repeating of a mantra or visualizing, I don't know if deity practice is something that works for you. Some people really love visualizing with specificity, but the compassion practices of bringing to mind the beloved beings, the unfamiliar beings, all beings, that might give your mind just enough to do to settle in. And then without even paying attention, like the breath has settled, and then what was the spacious awareness like? Was that a little more available or?
Yeah, and that does come in at times. Yeah, I actually really liked, I hadn't heard someone use the term before of kind of resting back in the mind, and that is often a movement, like a felt movement, I think of when I come into that space.
Yeah.
So that was helpful. And I've gone through phases of spacious awareness too.
Yeah.
But I think just this not living there for a number of years.
Yeah.
I'm just recognizing how persistent that's
Yeah.
been.
And it really is so deserving of your loving attention, and who knows what's the way in, right? And hopefully you have some sense, right, of what isn't the way in. And then I think when those knots are so persistent and for so long, and like you mentioned, the striving, we can get literally knotted around the knots. So relaxing even with like, yeah, that's still here. And maybe it will be here your whole lifetime as a teacher, right? Of how to be gentle and how to be soft and how to, like, who knows? And then maybe you wake up one morning and you're like, oh my God, must have been the pizza last night. Like, who knows? Like these things, it's so funny. I don't know if anyone's had this experience where there's such an ache in the heart or such a pain in the heart, kind of a, feeling betrayed or hurt. And then you wake up one day and you're like, I'm not mad at that person anymore. Oh my God. So it's like that non-intervention intervention, which I think handshake can be, and many of these practices kind of point to. And it is a bit more of a tantric point of view that we don't need to exclude anything. We really include it. And then in our seeing of it, the poison can become like a medicine and naturally self-liberate. And though that term can sound very lofty and hard to reach, it really is just the cobra unwinding itself once it has this space. So, thank you so much. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to read some here, and it's really sweet. Some of you might be familiar with the paramitas. These are the spiritual qualities, one of the many lists of Tibetan Buddhism. And this list, in some ways, it's kind of instructions for how to live an engaged Buddhism. So Tsoknyi tells this wonderful story to get us into this conversation of how do we come into action with our practice. He says, Unfortunately, many of us get caught up in a sense of well-being and forget the most essential lesson that the Buddha, as well as many great teachers of other traditions, have tried to instill into us, that the deepest of all teachings is that until all of us are free, none of us are free. We end up resting in our own comfort zones, our contentment dimming our awareness of the pain and hardship that others may be feeling. And so this idea here, this idea of kind of true interdependence and recognizing not the, idealistic hope of, I wish everyone could be free, but really I'm not that free because others aren't free. It requires a very, essential skill, which is how can we tolerate the distress of the world? Right? Because in order for us to care about others who are not free, we have to turn our attention towards the suffering. And many of us, doom scroll, and even though you're attending to the suffering, there's still actually a separation between you and that harm or that pain. Like with the bodhicitta, with the open heart towards awakening, we're not only kind of witnessing, we're like in some ways strengthening that spark of care and desire. I think it can be very easy for us to feel immediately overwhelmed by the idea of opening to more suffering or feeling as though it's up to us to do more. And I think there's also, he's kind of pushing us into this middle ground of, yes, it's so important to cultivate our own practice and to find stability in the mind and depth in the heart, but don't stop there. Like, don't stop there. Like, keep it going. So he said, through practice and study and teaching, I realized that I had some problematic attachments to my sense of self. And after reflecting for a while, I realized I was caught up in a stage of practice I've learned to describe as cozy Dharma. It's a stage at which one feels a little bit proud of one's understanding and superficially content with one's accomplishments, where one thinks, oh, the Dharma is so good, I'm so happy. Yet lurking underneath that complacency is a nagging discontent, a feeling that the Dharma offers something much grander and more fulfilling than just coziness. And it's interesting because, of course, not meditation per se, but mindfulness and the way it's permeated our culture is often sold as cozy, like be a little less anxious, be a little more productive, sleep well. And that's great. All of that is great. It's very hard to practice well without a fundamental level of psychological and physical well-being. It's just very hard. But that nagging feeling like there's more than just self-optimization or feeling okay. And that kind of nagging longing to something greater. I do think it's a kind of fundamental existential human experience. And we can miss it by being distracted and overwhelmed or whatever else. But that like, what is this for? What is this about? That nagging longing. The way Buddhism, not that it solves it, but the way that Buddhism interprets that fundamental human longing is the heart's desire to be more free and more open in order to really have that ability to hold all beings. And then we don't just stay there, we act out of that. And I imagine many people here have had this experience where you feel the aliveness of your practice starting to shift how you act in the world. It becomes not only like when I'm here in the Dharma Collective, I hold the door open for people. And one time I gave up my seat or it really, you're like, oh, wow, like I'm different towards others. And there's in that case, like a very healthy confidence that can arise from that shift. And then it's also like this invitation towards more. Like we want more of that feeling, more of that freedom, because it feels very good. However, it's interesting. There has to be some level of discomfort throughout all of our practice, I think. There's discomfort when we, meditate and our mind is insane. There's a discomfort when we open to the difficulty of others. There's a discomfort of not knowing if we're doing it right. And part of the whole training is being with discomfort, right? And learning how to tolerate that. And so Tsoknyi is pointing out here that sometimes we can get enough comfort that we think that that's the goal. Like, I've made it. I'm sleeping at night. I'm like less rude to my parents when we have dinner. I, kind of care more about more people in the world. Like, whew, did it, right? And he just doesn't want us to stop there. He wants us to keep going. And again, I think it's always really helpful to think of these huge heroes of boundless compassion, where the bodhicitta is like so alive and so overflowing. He mentions, of course, Martin Luther King and Gandhi, and then many more people who throughout history have it's truly out of spiritual kind of grounding, are putting themselves all the way forward. And it's curious, because a lot of the people who are putting themselves so much out there with their compassion to the world, it causes so much discomfort for them and others. But that bigger knowing of something else more important allows the distress to be tolerated, in an ongoing way. So he says that he'd lost touch with his hero's heart, the essence of bodhicitta. He says when he was teaching, he would start to feel tired and feel like, oh, I wish this was over soon. I want to go out here. I want to go there. I want to do something else. And that he was tired and distracted and bored. And he was leading a retreat in Bodh Gaya. Some of you might know it's a very sacred place in India. It's where it's said that the Buddha became enlightened under a Bodhi tree. So there's this beautiful tree. People circumambulate the tree, and everyone is always eagerly waiting a leaf to fall from the tree. So take home as a memento. You can't take the leaves, but so he's there circumambulating the tree, walking around the tree, considering this dilemma of his cozy Dharma situation. It's a horrible realization when you realize you're kind of engaged in self-deception and have been for a while, and you're like, oh no. It's like that. It's a relief, because then you're like, yes, I'm on to myself. I'm totally, not living into my authentic purpose or meaning or sense of who I am. But I think he's feeling that as he's circumambulating, wow, I'm not really enacting bodhicitta, I'm just teaching it. And then something drops on his head, and he notices all these people stand around, and he sees the leaf starting to fall to the ground. And he's like, oh, the leaf. And everybody's rushing, and he just grabs the leaf. And in that moment, he feels huge, shame, here I am wanting to benefit all beings, and I just grab the leaf for myself. And it's his realization of oh my God, I have so much work to do. And he framed it, he kept it, he framed it, and he put it over his bed, and he said, from now on, until I attain complete freedom from pain and suffering, I dedicate myself wholly and completely without personal reward to the benefit of all beings. And that's right when the leaf fell. And so he had to just kind of use the framed leaf. He says, when I see the framed leaf, I'm reminded that nurturing the spark of being involves two related efforts. The first, of course, entails connecting with our basic openness, intelligence, and warmth. But the second necessitates extending the potential we've discovered within ourselves outward into the ways we conduct ourselves with everyone and everything we encounter in our daily lives. And it's interesting. Even if we just decided that tomorrow we would completely live out of whatever version is our understanding of the meaning and worldview and living ethics of Buddhism. What if we just lived out of that tomorrow? I bet it would be quite rewarding and maybe a little uncomfortable. And the way that he then says, bringing bodhicitta into practice, that we actually have to, develop these specific qualities and skills that help us along the path. Part of it involves, a bit of sacrifice. And again, like I think our contemporary culture and orientation, that's just not a hot topic. We're not like, what can I give up in order to help others? It's definitely acquisition and safety and makes sense. But this idea of bringing our compassion into action, it really can start quite simply and start with kind of the way that we orient to the world. So these paramitas, or these kind of specific spiritual qualities, he says that once we cultivate these, bodhicitta just starts naturally emerging. It starts to kind of naturally flow. The two that I want to share tonight, because I don't think we can get through all, are generosity and ethics. And I mean, I think everybody here has heard of Dharma talk, maybe from Mace, probably at least, at least once. So this term generosity is quite familiar to us, but there's a very deep understanding of generosity that actually relates to our willingness to be open with whatever is offered to us. So this generosity with life, like can we actually feel that what is being offered to us without kind of pushing against it and wishing it were different? That is our generosity with what life is offering. That's a very big view of generosity. There's also, just the beautiful view of being considerate in a very explicit way, like what can I do that is of help and benefit to others in small and large ways. It might be your neighbors, it might be someone you work with or care about, maybe it's at a grander scale, but orienting the mind like towards the paramita of generosity as your first. This is the first paramita, like the very first is this generosity. It's very interesting. It loosens so much of our grasping and attachment when we start to consider what is cultivated when generosity is the first move, like the first way I want to respond towards others. Let's see, what does he say? He says, it's possible that the Buddha made generosity a practice in order to arouse the potential rooted within our own nature, the spark of warmth and openness that enables us to reconnect with our own hearts and the hearts of others. When in the time of the Buddha, everybody lived off generosity. All of the Buddha and his monks, they had no possessions. Everything was gifted to them, including their daily meal. So this real sense of interdependence, and it could make you think that, wow, the Buddha and the monks, they were so vulnerable. That's so much. And yet I know what they felt was they were giving all of these people the opportunity to engage in generosity. And that really was such a strong worldview at the time, that by offering what you had or some of what you had, you were strengthening your own heart and kind of whatever resource and energy you had accumulated by sharing it with another, it became so much larger. It's tricky in our contemporary culture, that generosity. There's so much need, it's endless. It's all around, everyone, like anywhere, you buy like a coffee and there's like at the checkout, like, do you want to donate $2 to this or that? And you're like, of course I do, but I don't, because the coffee's $10. That like there's so many opportunities for us to give that we can kind of just throw our hands in the air and be like, I can't, it's too much. So I think the invitation of this first paramita is looking at what gets in the way of the natural generosity of the heart. Maybe at that greater level of receiving what the world is offering, but also the generosity in which we want to be of support and help others. I mean, bodhicitta is very generous. We're offering our heart for all beings. So it's very useful to consider like what kind of closes the heart, what prevents the generosity, as opposed to what can I do to feel more generous? Like it's there. Generosity is there. Not when we feel, super anxious, super angry, and deep in our own despair. So there are some very clear obstacles. But the generosity of heart, like we feel at ease and peace and content, of course we want to share. So to really tune into that as a fundamental quality. Maybe I'm not going to get to ethics. Questions on generosity or reflections? I mean, I know many of you have thought about the paramitas many times. What's it like to think about it again? Yes, Robert.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Mm-hmm. I think this is so pertinent right now. So the six, at least in China, it's the six paramitas. I don't know. I mean, you guys have lots of lists.
Right, it's 8,
yeah.
10. Yeah.
But the thing about generosity that my teacher said, the reason why it's like one of the most important is because you don't have to have any experience to practice it. And people are overwhelmed with how do I practice my Dharma amidst the chaos? And it's those simple little things that bring you right back to that, and it connects you with people, and which is what we're trying to do, right?
Yeah.
So I think, because otherwise we get overwhelmed with how do I, it's the balance between the absolute and the relational.
Yes.
Right? And the relational is how I serve people on the daily.
Yep.
And anybody can do it, and next thing you know, you feel better, and it's like kind of tag you're blessed.
Yeah.
You know?
Beautiful. I love it too. And the way you describe it that way, like our act of generosity likely will create a sense of gratitude and then that virtuous cycle, right? We know that gratitude makes it more likely that we then ourselves are kind. So yeah, beautiful. Other thoughts or questions on generosity? Yes, Jim.
We do the homeless care packages things, but one of the reasons that I love doing that is, and I always have them in my car, is that no matter what I'm feeling, if I come across somebody that is in need, it kind of cuts through whatever anger or road rage or anything that I might be feeling. Like as often I'll drive by somebody at a stoplight or something.
Yeah.
And just hand them the package and or the bag, and it's a really nice way of kind of cutting through whatever kind of bullshit is going on in my head. Just like you see somebody like, oh right, I'm supposed to be handing these things out. I should do that.
Yeah.
And it's just a nice way of nice reminder to be present and to kind of get you out of your head.
Yeah, beautiful. And I think, sometimes people feel that in order for it to be truly generous, it can't feel good. I just don't agree. It feels very good to do good. It feels good to watch others do good, right? There is, again, that virtuous cycle. And we need to see it. And I feel good remembering that you give those packages out. Didn't you used to sometimes make them here?
Yeah, we did it in December. We made
Sweet. I would love to do that again sometime. Great. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much. I saw a hand here. Yeah.
I felt shame because my question was anyway, so I dropped it.
Bring it back.
So you know what? I wonder if the book or if you thought about when was the first time that generosity happened.
Yeah.
That just came to me like, have you read anything about when did it first start?
It's a beautiful question. Yeah. No need for diminishing it. And You know, the Dalai Lama is very fond of saying that our first experience in this world is compassion. It's like if we are so fortunate, we come out of the womb and we're immediately given milk. And that is the very imprint of compassion. And it's also the kind of foundations of empathy, right? That attunement with another being. And when we are, that little being, we are completely helpless. And we're receiving the generosity, right? So he calls it compassion, but I could see that as considered generosity. And because of these huge heads that we have and this very long gestation and then a very long prolonged period of helplessness, there's some thought that that's why we have this sensitivity and ability with such depth for empathy and compassion. Because we need to have that caregiving orientation towards a helpless little being that's a helpless little being for a long time. Like it just blows my mind when a little duckling comes out and they're just like in the water and you're like, oh my God. Like maybe they need like a little practice, but and we need so much love and attunement, so much love and attunement. And the breaks in that love and attunement, which are natural because we have human parents, create so much disturbance and difficulty. And we spend years in therapy, right? Because it's so fundamental to our sense of need and connection and safety. And so kind of back to Jim's point, like connecting with another being in generosity, it like cuts through. It's so fundamental, and that's why I love, Tsoknyi saying this isn't bodhicitta, this energy of giving, of caring, of deep empathy and understanding in order to be compassionate. It's not something that we make, it's something we reveal. Like it's right there, just covered up. Thank you. Okay, we're going to end on time for once. I used to end on time all the time, and then recently I've gotten too excited. So let's take a moment. Come back to the body. Feel the support of this earth. Feel gratitude for this beautiful earth beneath us. Softening through the face and the chest and the belly. And then we imagine that this time we've spent together has its own energy, its own radiance. And that we can offer this energy and radiance. So in the way that sometimes our symbolic representations can have meaning, we imagine symbolically offering this as though we are paving the pathway to bringing this heartfelt intention of compassion to the world. And so placing hands together in front of the heart, we imagine offering this energy and radiance that all beings everywhere could feel love and belonging. All beings everywhere could feel safe and protected from inner and outer harm. That all beings everywhere could be free. Thank you so much for your practice, for your presence. It's really lovely to be here with you. I have the good fortune to sit retreat next week. So Jesse Fleming is going to be a substitute teacher. He's really an amazing practitioner and dear friend of mine. He practices in the Shinzen tradition, some of you might be familiar with. It's a really interesting method of tuning into different sensory channels in order to experience spacious awareness. And he's going to, bless you, he's going to be talking about compassion and awareness next week. There is, if you haven't already signed up, I'm going to do a 3-day retreat up in Mendocino in June 26th through 28th. It's going to really only be available for Dharma Collective folks. And it's a beautiful center. We'll be practicing with the elements. There's a river right there. So that will be this summer. And Lopan Chandra and I are still teaching this retreat at Esalen. There's a couple spots left. Second week of April, if that's within your means. We're going to be practicing on the mandala of emotions. It'll be beautiful. And we have the Peace Walk coming up April 11th. There was a meeting today, folks starting to figure out how we want to organize, but very much in line with this engaged Buddhism, our way to show our solidarity with those monks who are so beautifully exhibiting that engaged Buddhism and bringing compassion to the world through symbolic action. So that'll be here on April 11th, starting at 11. Any other info on that? Do you, anyone? That we? Yep.
Okay, so there's a paper. I think it was meeting in Golden Park at like Hippie Hill at 10:30. Meet at 10:30.
Oh.
Oh yeah, thank you. Okay, yeah. Let me read the paper one minute here. All right, so the idea was to meet at Hippie Hill in Golden Gate Park at 10:30, and then depart by 11 and walk in the direction towards Ocean Beach. So it's about 3 miles.
Wow.
And then, yeah, the guess is that that might take us up to like 2 or 3 o'clock,
Cool.
and then hang and depart. Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Love it. Sweet. And then other announcements. Lots of fun stuff happening.
Yes, and you can have a fun weekend with the Dharma Collective. I'm Mace, a volunteer, and let's see what's going on. So Saturday night, we're doing a first with this fellow named Kid Beyond, who is a Buddhist teacher, but also does a lot of singing and beatboxing. So he's going to do a combo thing called Soul Song here. So if you want to come hang out Friday night from 7:30 to 9:30, there will be singing, but it's not competitive singing. It's super fun, super
Not
wholesome.
Who's Got Talent.
Yeah, it's just really fun. And so it'll be Dharma and singing. And then on Sunday, Noam wanted me to remind you all. So Michael Owens is a really amazing teacher, and he's been doing, it's only online because he lives elsewhere, a big deep dive for years into sutta studies. And some people found that super intellectual and a little difficult, like lots of material. So now he's shifting to a like, what is Buddhism? What are your questions? What's going on for you with practice? Kind of more of an open forum. And so folks might really, those of you that were not doing the deep intellectual dive into the suttas, so that's Sunday online. And then on Monday, in the engaged Buddhist lineage of what we've been talking about, there's going to be a de-escalation training here. So like, how do we, with practice, with something, with some of these principles, how do we engage in the world right now in a de-escalating way? And that's for those of us that might want to, you know, are going to protest or going to things where you might be more encountering people that are not agreeing with us. So that's from 5 to 7 during Augusta's Sangha. So please come if you want to do that. And that's a very specific trainer who does that for practice. And then I am going to pass this off to Jimmy.
Hey, you guys. I'm Jimmy. I'm another one of the volunteers. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Dana, what we were talking about before, generosity. And it's said that when folks would come to the Buddha and ask for meditation instruction, the first thing he would do was send them out to be generous in the world. And then they'd come back and they'd ask him, well, you know, I've done this stuff and now I'd like to learn to meditate. And he'd send them back out to be generous in the world. And one of the reasons for that is it reminds us that we are engaged in the world. Although this is a self-reflective practice, we are not navel gazing. We are engaged in the world, and we're staying engaged in the world. And the other thing is what Eve was talking about, what Tsoknyi was talking about, what Robert alluded to, is that it allows us to feel good in a very, very wholesome kind of way, a really clear, deep kind of way that it feels good to be generous. And the reason I'm talking about this is because the Dharma Collective operates on a deficit. And the deficit that we've been operating on lately is becoming less and less sustainable. And this is a super, super valuable resource. For me, it is. And if you feel like it is for you, it's an investment in yourself, it's an investment in ourselves, it's an investment in our practice to be able to give financial support if that's within your means. If it's not, no problem. Your presence here and your practice is generosity as well. And if you can volunteer and be of service, that's another way to practice generosity. But if you can give financial support, that's really, really helpful. The rent is expensive. Keeping the lights on costs money. Keeping the heater on costs money. Paying the water bill costs money. Trying to keep our teachers supported is helpful as well. So if you can, please give what you can. There's a bunch of ways to do it. Up front, we've got QR codes for PayPal, Venmo. We accept cash. We accept credit cards. But again, if you can, and if you can't, just keep on showing up because we love having you. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Jimmy.